everybody. Welcome to Go With The Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews. My name is Brandon Adams. Happy to have the entire Dog Nation team making their picks for the games this upcoming weekend as we look deep at least the games that'll be played in the SEC. We've already got one of those that's not going to be played, and maybe another one on the way. We'll talk about that more during the program. I'll welcome in DARI PAYROW from R.S. Andrews. And DARI, before we check the standings for this week and start hearing about this week's games, I admitted this to you off the air before the show began. This is a very challenging week for me. You know, I have a couple strong feelings on a couple of these games. There are a couple of these SEC games this week to me that are total toss-ups and really pretty tough guesses all the way around. How do you personally feel about the board before we get started?
Well, after last week, I think it was like opposite week because I was going on. I should have flipped it. Really bad week. Thought I had a pretty good grasp on some of these teams. I really don't. It's kind of all over the map in the SEC right now. It's tough to get a clear picture on some of these teams, especially some of these games this week. Like you said, there's a handful that are like a toss-up. They're almost like a pick-em. It's really tough to get a feel for it.
Well, speaking of last week, let's update our tote board, so to speak, on where we stand in the standings as a precursor to the picks that are coming here this week. By the way, congratulations go out to the Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers. Audience been strong thus far this year after a 6-3 week last week, running the record now to 17-8 on the year for the Dog Nation Daily audience. Jeff Sintel also off to a great start too. Winning week a week ago, 5-4, puts him at 16-9 for the year. Mike Griffith also 5-4 a week ago at 15-10 for the year. After that, with a winning record, is DARI PAYROW, a 4-5 week last week, makes him 13-12 on the campaign. Me, couple games behind that. I'm 11-14 thus far this season after a 4-5 week last week. And Connor Riley, 8-17 after a 2-7 week a week ago. So he, like most of us, looking forward to having hopefully better picks here this week. Of course, before we tell you about Georgia and Alabama, let me tell you why it is we're able to do this show. All thanks to our friends DARI PAYROW and the entire team there at R.S. Andrews. For all your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electric needs, you can trust them. They show up on time. They do the work that's promised for the price it's promised. One of the reasons why I always have great pride and take great pleasure in recommending my friends at R.S. Andrews. And you'll find out the same thing when you check them out online at rsandrews.com. Story after story, they've been delivering smiles. We'll find out if Georgia is capable of delivering a smile on the road at Alabama this week. Quick explanation of how things work around here. In just a moment, you'll hear from Mike Griffith, Jeff Sintel, Connor Riley, the Dog Nation team. Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers will have a chance to weigh in. I'll share my thoughts, as disjointed as they might be. Then once the consensus is established, DARI PAYROW will decide if he wants to go with the flow and join the consensus on the pick for that particular game. We invite you to play along at home, make your own picks, and try to find out if you can do better than us over the course of this season-long competition. With all that in mind, as I said before, Tuscaloosa, Alabama is the site. Undefeated Alabama, undefeated Georgia. Dogs doing a lot with defense. Alabama with a very high-powered offense. Two teams that know each other well. Kirby Smart, former defensive coordinator at Alabama. Obviously hiring Scott Cochran, the former Bama strength coach, over the course of the offseason. A lot of Alabama fans take great pleasure in a chance to beat some of their former compatriots there in the assistant coaching ranks. So there's a lot of backstory between these both teams, and the Tide are a 6-point favorite here at home. Mike Griffith, start us off with your thoughts right there.
Well, this is a great game. Nick Saban has never lost at home in the month of November. It's pretty incredible. We know he's 21-0 against his 9 former assistants. I'm going to take Alabama to win this football game, Brandon. 24-21 until Georgia puts its best offensive players on the field. I think Alabama.
So Mike Griffith takes the side of UGA there, plus the 6 points against Alabama. He does have Alabama winning the game outright, though. Jeff Sintel, what are your thoughts on the Dogs and the Tide?
What I do know where I'm at with this game is if you're giving me Georgia and the 6 points, I like that. I like the thought of that entertainment wager on that end. I just think it's going to be a fantastic game. I think it's going to be part 1 of 2. And I think the thing for me that I'm worrying about is, will part 1 look a lot like part 2? And
so Jeff, on the side of UGA there as well, at least able to keep it closer than the experts might think. Connor Riley, how about you?
Apparently I have some ground to make up. I'm going to go against the grain here. As long as this number is under 7, give me Alabama.
So Connor takes Alabama. Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers disagree. They take Georgia, but by a slimmer margin than might typically be the case, 61% on the side of Georgia plus the 6 points. Dari, I'm going to take Georgia here as well. And I don't have an overwhelming reason to take Georgia. I do think the Dogs defense will show up big on Saturday. I think that matters. Alabama probably has more success, scores more points than we've seen other opposing offenses do to Georgia this year. Here's the only thing to keep in mind. That for all we make of Alabama's run at home here, they've only lost twice there outright since 2015. If you want to go back and look at the last couple of seasons dating back to the start of the 2018 season, they haven't been necessarily dominant at home against the spread, just 8-6 against the number, although they've been winning those games on the field and outright there at Bryant-Denny Stadium. So the chances of Georgia keeping it close, at least the gambling odds would suggest that's a possibility. A chance to win this game late, I'll hold off on making my official pick on that. But certainly keeping this within the 6 points, I think, is a strong possibility. So I'll take Georgia. That puts the flow on the side of Georgia. You want to go with the flow and take the Dogs.
Oh, Brandon, give me the Dogs.
Oh, all right.
This is Georgia's time. This is why LeCount stayed. Unfinished business. This is why Monty Rice followed him and everyone else. Okay, I'm getting goosebumps right now. I love the Dogs. Who would have ever thought Stetson Bennett would be the quarterback under center that's part of the team that breaks Saban's streak? That's right. Georgia's going to win this game. Saban is 22-0 against his assistants. That comes to an end this Saturday night. Bama in 2020 is all about offense. Everyone knows they're scoring at will. They're putting up a ton of points. They have 3 NFL wide receivers. They're studs. However, in the Saban era, Bama's defense has been their cornerstone pillar. It's been the difference maker for them for all the SEC titles and the national championship game. That's not the case in 2020. Here's a stat for you, Brandon. Alabama has a 70th ranked pass defense in the country. That's out of 74 teams that are playing right now. Georgia has the best defense in the country. Not third, they are numero uno. Okay, it's time for them to shine on the biggest stage against the best team and offense that they're going to face all year. Okay, Bama's wide receivers are going to test Georgia, but I think Georgia's going to have a strong performance from Stetson Bennett against that secondary. I believe the mailman will deliver. I believe Georgia will take care of the ball. They need to get the running game going, and I think they'll get the help from Cook as he's back. I think he's going to make some big plays in this game. I really love Georgia. And just so you know, the last 2 times they've gone to Tuscaloosa, Georgia has won.
Yep.
The last time is 2007, which was the first year that Saban was at Alabama.
I love all that, Dari. Love the passion, love the energy, and Georgia fans would love nothing more than to see that result actually play out on Saturday. And you gave us a lot of good reasons to consider why that might actually take place. We're off and running here on Go with the Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews. Maybe one of the tougher games on the slate here this week. South Carolina returns to Williams-Brice Stadium on Saturday to host Auburn. Gamecocks fresh off a blowout win at Vanderbilt a week ago. Auburn fresh off one of the most controversial results in recent SEC history, getting the outright win but failing to cover against Arkansas in a game where, frankly, they were lucky to even escape from Jordan-Hare Stadium after what appeared to be a backwards pass and a likely Arkansas recovery of a fumble. But instead, the officials blew the play dead, gave Auburn a chance to kick the game-winning field goal, and just barely sneaking inside the uprights was that one for Auburn. They get a win over Sam Pittman. We'll talk Hogs more later on. But Auburn trying to win 2-0 on the field and maybe do this one in more legitimate fashion, doing so as a 3-point road favorite at Willie B. So, Mike, give us a start here. Your thoughts on Auburn and South Carolina.
Man, I like Auburn 24-21, but for the win, I guess I'm going to take Auburn and give the points 25-21.
So Mike takes Auburn there, bouncing back here against South Carolina. Jeff Sintel, what about you, the Tigers and the Gamecocks?
I like this game, and I like Auburn in a big way. The points there, I think that's immaterial. I can see Auburn winning this thing by 7 points, 10 points, 14 points. I think these programs are kind of going not where things are right now, but I think Auburn has found where its identity is, and that identity would kind of be what happens when a chicken crosses the road and gets hit by a tank. Give me Auburn big here.
So Jeff also on Auburn here as well. Both the Dog Nation scribes in agreement. Connor, your thoughts?
I really don't know which way to go on this one. So I'm going to take the home underdog here. Give me the Gamecocks and the points.
So Connor on the side of South Carolina. Dog Nation daily listeners and viewers, they disagree, but not by a wide margin. 55% are on the side of Auburn here, minus the 3 points. One I think is a very difficult game to predict. Listen, I felt very good about South Carolina last week. Thought that Vanderbilt would lay down and die against the Gamecocks, and that's pretty much exactly what happened. I was wrong, though, about Auburn. I thought that Auburn would bounce back and play better against Arkansas. And, Dari, the thing that gives me pause about this game is it just appears right now that Auburn's not the team capable of doing that. But I am going to operate from a little bit of a zigzag theory here. South Carolina, big performance a week ago, difficulty to maintain that the following week. Auburn at some point in time, I mean, with every passing week in which they either get blown out by Georgia or win a game they should have lost to Arkansas, more and more questions mount about Gus Malzahn and his stewardship of this program. At some point in time, I think Auburn wants to push back against some of that. This, to me, seems like a spot where that can happen. Road favorite, maybe a little dangerous. Not a huge number, though. Give me Auburn minus the 3. I will take the Tigers. Don't feel great about it, but it is the pick that I'm making. That also, by a decent margin, puts the flow on the side of Auburn as well. Dar, you want to go with the flow and take Auburn here?
I do. I'm going to go with the flow and take Auburn. I'm kind of in the same bucket as you here. I've kind of really struggled with picking Auburn games as I look at their body of work on both sides of the ball. They've kind of been somewhat of a disappointment. Their defense played good at times, but Nick's has just not been accurate. And this one's a really tough game to pick. Auburn's dominated this series. They're 10-1-1 all time against South Carolina. They have 8 wins in a row. I want to take South Carolina as the home dog, but I just can't do it. So I'm going to come back with Auburn. I'm not really confident in the pick, but I'm just going to follow some of those trends in the history between these two teams.
Yeah, let me just follow up on that, Dari. I actually like South Carolina as an underdog, especially at home against a lot of teams. I just don't love them right here, if that makes sense. In a normal situation, South Carolina getting 3 at home would be a situation in which I actually could potentially see myself being interested. I'm just not going to completely sell all my Auburn stock just yet, though.
Yeah, I agree. I'm kind of on the same page with you on this.
All right. So next game, and this is also for me another very difficult game to predict. We'll see how easily everyone else can kind of conjure up their answer on this. Kentucky, after getting a nice 24-2 win against Mississippi State last week, heads to Knoxville in a rivalry game we typically associate with the end of the season. They are playing much earlier in October this year. The Tennessee Vols, the host team here, obviously hungry to play better after getting walloped in Athens by the Georgia Bulldogs a week ago. Vegas and the online books expect Tennessee to do just that, bounce back in a nice way. They are 6-point home favorites there at Neyland Stadium. So, Mike, the scene in Knoxville pretty well. Why don't you start us off? Vols -6 against the Kentucky Wildcats. Tell us what you think.
Yeah, I got Tennessee winning this game 26-21, so that I got Kentucky covering the spread.
So some of our picks this week, we have very rapid-fire reactions. Mike gives you the Kentucky Wildcats right there. Jeff, who's never a man of few words, his thoughts on Tennessee and Kentucky. Jeff, go ahead.
I do see Tennessee covering. The one thing I think about the Vols I know by now is that they are the second or third best team in the SEC East. What I do know for sure is that Kentucky is not the second or third best team in the SEC East. Pitiful offensive showing last week, really, for Kentucky, even though they won the football game. I like Tennessee by a comfortable margin, especially laying the 6 points. I can see Tennessee winning this game by 2 touchdowns.
So, Jeff, Riverside's Mike's Kentucky pick to take Tennessee. Connor Riley, what about your thoughts? Tennessee and Kentucky, go ahead.
Give me Tennessee here. Mark Stoops can't beat Jeremy Pruitt.
I'm telling you, some of these picks are rapid fast this week. Connor takes Tennessee. Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers, they agree. 63% here, also on the side of the Vols. Mike, I'm going to take Tennessee too. This is a game that earlier in the year, I guess I would have thought Tennessee had a chance to lose. There's not a huge reason to take them based on trends at home here. Going back to the start of the Jeremy Pruitt era, Tennessee is 7-6 at home against the spread, but that doesn't scream one thing or another. We've made a ton of attention last couple of weeks, but the fact that the Vols had been on a pretty good run, ATS, the start of the 2020 season, the end of the 2019 season, that obviously came to an end last week. This has the feel of a little bit of a sucker play to it, but I'm still going to take Tennessee here minus the 6. I don't know how good Tennessee is. I don't know how good Kentucky is. One of the big things for me is when you've had a better than you're supposed to play performance at home and you're forced to go on the road the following week, sometimes things don't work out for you all that well. There could be a little bit of a trend with some of my picks with that in mind here this week. That's my number one reason for taking the Vols. I can't scream this from the mountaintops, but Tennessee minus the 6 is my pick. That puts the flow on the side of the Vols. You want to go with the flow and take Tennessee.
Yeah, I'm going to take Tennessee. Kentucky was great last week, but it's easy to win when you get 6 turnovers. However, Tennessee's been really good at not turning the ball over. They did against Georgia, but against everyone else, they haven't. Tennessee has owned the Wildcats. Kentucky has lost 17 in a row at Tennessee, and the Vols are 11-2 against the spread in their last 13 games against Kentucky. I think this is a good bounce back spot for Tennessee here. So give me the Vols.
All right, so we're off and running here. It's a Go with the Flow presented by R.S. Andrews. Much the same way we kind of go with the flow and make our picks here each and every week. If you want the flow to be going in your home, whether that be air conditioning coming out of your vents or hot water flowing from your water heater in your shower, any kind of those air conditioning, heating, plumbing, electric needs, our friends at R.S. Andrews can take good care of you and all that. So make sure you find them online at rsandrews.com. All right, so that's the story there. Let's move on and talk about another game in the SEC West. And I think this is a really, really fun game. Ole Miss, after giving Alabama a run for its money in Oxford last week at Vaught-Hemingway Stadium, heads to Arkansas to take on the Razorbacks. Razorbacks have got to be in an ornery mood. It was one of the worst officiating blunders and really one of the poorest explanations from the SEC office as to why Arkansas wasn't awarded the football, which would have essentially sealed the victory last week at Jordan-Hare Stadium. Arkansas, though, gets no recourse for this whatsoever and has essentially decided to move on from this. However, what can be noticed with the Hogs is, depending on where you found the week 1 line against Georgia, Arkansas is 3-0 this year thus far against the spread, although just 1-2 on the field so far this season. But they do play a winnable game on Saturday as 2.5-point underdogs at Reynolds Razorback Stadium. With that in mind, Mike Griffith, your thought on the Rebels going to Fayetteville?
Yeah, I like everything Sam Pittman's done, but he hasn't seen anything like this Ole Miss offense. They move at warp speed, and they beat the Hogs 31-14 and cover that spread.
So Mike Griffith there, impressed with the Ole Miss offense. Jeff Sintel, what do you think about Ole Miss in Arkansas?
Guys, I think this is the most interesting game of the week. I really do. I just look at all those weapons, Matt Corral, Jerry and Ely, Elijah Moore, all those weapons for Ole Miss. I don't think the Hogs can kind of get together and stick with them. I think this is going to feel something like a 37-28 win for Ole Miss. Give me those points, obviously. But I think Ole Miss is just going to outshoot Arkansas this week.
So Jeff is on Ole Miss there as well. Connor Riley, your thoughts on the Hogs and the Rebels?
BA talks from time to time about certain games where if you watch, these are like true SEC games that true SEC fans watch. I believe this week, this is one of those games. Seems like right now everyone and their mom is on Ole Miss, and because of that, for some reason, I just want to take a nice home dog here. Give me Arkansas plus the 2.5.
So Connor takes Arkansas. Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers, they agree. Audience on the side of Sam Pittman there by the tune of 71%. Pittman has really earned some respect from our audience here thus far this season with the way he's coached Arkansas. And why wouldn't that be true, given the fact they've competed in portions of at least every game and really, I think most people would say, should have been awarded the victory last week at Auburn. Dari, I like to give trend data when it's appropriate. I also like to point out when I don't think trend data has much relevance. And in a game like this for Ole Miss, just the third game of Lane Kiffin's tenure there, anything from the first 3 games this season has the tendency to potentially be too small of a data set. Obviously, the same thing would be true for Sam Pittman. Previous year performances for either of these programs probably don't matter a ton here. So this is what I'm going to base my pick on in this game, and it is enough for me to recommend this pick. I thought Ole Miss celebrated too much for a team that lost a game last Saturday. There's a lot of pats on the back for the fact that Ole Miss's offense challenged Alabama. And listen, that was a thrilling game, entertaining for almost anybody who tuned in for it. But that's a lot of accolades for a game that ended up being an L in the win-loss column. And now, after big points at home, they go on the road to Arkansas against a team that has really shown capable of playing for a portion of the game against Georgia, for the entirety of the game against Auburn, and obviously Mississippi State took a big L from Arkansas going back to week 2. I trust Sam Pittman in this spot right now. There's more measurable talent for Ole Miss. That's why they're a favorite on the road. But this is a flat spot for the Rebels, I believe. Not only do I think that Arkansas covers the number, I actually think they win the game and find a way to get the win this week that they should have gotten last week. So I recommend Arkansas here as strongly as I can do anything this week on the slate of games. And that puts the flow on the side of Arkansas as well. You want to go with the flow and take the Hogs?
Do not. I'm gonna take the Rebels here. They got too much offensive firepower. This game is a really tough one to pick. I think you can go either way. I just don't think Arkansas is enough to keep up. I don't think they can run the ball enough and control the clock long enough to keep the Rebels' offense off the field. Could, like you said, could be a little bit of a hangover for Ole Miss here, with kind of laying it on the line against Alabama and now going on the road. And Arkansas has been a surprise with how they competed in all the games this year. Pittman's doing a great job. Ole Miss's defense is trash, so I think Felipe is going to have a big day passing. I just think this is going to be another SEC shootout. I like the over more so in this game pick, and I think this game may score 100 points total. Here's some stats. They're kind of, I know you said your trends. I get it with the new coaches, but they both clash in this one. You have Ole Miss that's 7-1 against the spread in their last 10 games. Arkansas is 5-1 against the spread in their last 6 games. The over has cashed in 10 of the Rebels' last 13 in October, and the under has cashed 11 of the last 16 for the Razorbacks. So it's kind of opposites colliding. I think it's kind of a pick 'em. This is normally a game I would stay away from.
Yeah, I think it should be interesting. And I do think your point about Arkansas finding a way to keep games a little lower, kind of matters here a little bit too. So very interesting contrast of styles between both these teams, and we'll see how that plays out. The other team from the Magnolia State also plays an interesting game on Saturday, and an important one for them after really bad performances against Kentucky, not looking good against Arkansas. Mississippi State comes back home with a chance to host Texas A&M. Texas A&M fresh off one of the bigger wins of the SEC this season, standing up and beating Florida last week. Aggies 6.5-point favorites on the road this week at Mississippi State. So clearly they have earned some respect after what they did a week ago. So with that in mind, Aggies and Bulldogs. Mike Griffith, give us your thoughts here.
Yeah, whoever thought we'd see the day, Connor, that Mike Leach's defense would outscore his offense 2-0 last week against lowly Kentucky. I've got to take Texas A&M. I think there's some momentum in College Station. 34-24. Give me the Aggies to cover.
Texas A&M is the pick for Mike Griffith. Jeff Sintel, how about you?
Yeah, I think some of the misery continues for Costello. Those 6 interceptions last week across all Mississippi State passers, Mike Leach. I like Texas A&M. I like what Kellen Mond showed, even though they don't have all their weapons. I like the weapons they have at running back now and at tight end. I like Texas A&M. Given the 6 points, I think Texas A&M is going to win this game outright by about 10 points.
So Jeff Sintel on the side of Texas A&M. Connor Riley, what about your thoughts on the Aggies and the Bulldogs?
Mike Leach is ruining KJ Costello. He's not getting off to a great start. It's going to be another tough week this week. Give me Texas A&M in the 6.
So clean sweep on Texas A&M to this point. Dog Nation daily listeners and viewers going to add to that total. 68% here do take Jimbo Fisher and the Aggies on the road as a 6.5-point favorite. And Dari, I got to slam the brakes here just for a minute. Now, this is a little bit of a contrarian play for me because generally speaking, Texas A&M is a bet on team for me. I do like Jimbo Fisher more than some. And typically speaking, Mike Leach and the Bulldogs, a little bit of a bet against team for me. And a couple of times this year that's been profitable. This, though, is a dangerous spot because once again, you're talking about going on the road, what might be a little bit of a, sleepy version of Scott Field there in Starkville. for Texas A&M, who had an emotional, high-scoring win against Florida, a Mississippi State team playing for its life this week after having a lot of bad things said over the course of the last couple of weeks. I frankly don't think Mississippi State's good enough to win this game. I think Texas A&M probably ekes it out. And I think the Aggies could go on a little bit of a winning streak after this. But sometimes there's a tendency to exhale after a difficult portion of your schedule. And that makes the next game a little bit difficult. I see all of that coming to play here. This is just a hunch, but it is a little bit of a zigzag hunch of give me Texas A&M coming down off a high, give me Mississippi State building up after a dramatic low. Texas A&M still wins, but 6.5 to give to Mississippi State at home is a lot of points. I'll take the Bulldogs there. And that puts the flow, though, on the side of Texas A&M. Do you want to go with the flow and take Texas A&M?
I do not. I'm going to go back with Leach one more time. I'm gonna take Mississippi State in the points. They outgained Kentucky last week in that game. They just turned the ball over 6 times. That's something they can't do again this week against the Aggies. They got to be able to control the ball. But Brandon, here's some really good stats that I'm rolling with. Underdogs this year are 82, 56, and 2 against the spread across the board in all college football games.
Wow.
That's 59.4%. Okay, now here's the other one. Okay, underdogs at home are 28, 15, and 1. That's 65% hitting right now. I think that applies to this game right here. I think the home underdog with that many points is going to come through for Leach and the Bulldogs.
I think that's a great number. Very, very interesting stuff. And really, those are profitable trends to pay close attention to. And as Dari said, relevant for this game coming up on Saturday there as well. Before we close things out, let's turn our attention back to Georgia and Alabama. We made our pick against the spread a little earlier. Let's now also take a look at those over under the expected total. Georgia last week went over for the first time since the Georgia Tech game at the end of the 2019 season, and just the second time in a full calendar year, 12 months. You have to go back to the Tennessee game last season in Knoxville to find another instance where Georgia went over, but it did go over on Saturday against Tennessee. Defensive scores helping with that a little bit, and frankly, a couple of Georgia miscues that allowed Tennessee to get more points they otherwise would have gotten. So this week, going to Tuscaloosa, the total is set at 57. Mike Griffith, your thoughts? Georgia, over, under the 57 against Alabama.
Yeah, while I like Georgia to cover BA, I don't think that these teams will go over that 57. My 24-21 score, I'm not sure if the people have missed the Georgia defense. I just, that's too much. So Georgia covers the spread, but this game stays with the under.
So Mike, not concerned about taking that under even after Georgia went over a week ago. That's the side he's on, under here. How about Jeff Sintel, your thoughts, over under the 57 for Bama and UGA?
I'm actually of the feeling that Georgia can win the game if this game gets into the 30s and 40s in terms of points scored for both teams and this team going over the 57. I also like Georgia's chances in that defense keeping it low. This number feels right on the button to me. Maybe 55 to 58 is the range. I think Vegas knows what it's doing there. I'm going to go barely under this. I see one of those 28 to 27, 27 to 24 type games in Tuscaloosa this week.
So another under, this time from Jeff Sintel. Connor Riley, how about from you?
Georgia's not playing Tennessee this week, correct?
No.
All right, then give me the under because that's the only team Georgia seems to ever go over against. So give me the under.
So Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers going to make it a clean sweep by a tune of 73%. They join Connor Riley and the rest of the Dog Nation team there in taking the under. Dari, I can't join that fray, and this may be a little bit of a wishful thought on my part, but a week after Georgia's game against Tennessee went over, I'm going to take Georgia to go over here as well. Simply put, I feel like that if you're taking the underdog here in this spot, I think you need the over to kind of get there because I see Alabama scoring 28 points in this game. Georgia's a great defense, but a great defensive performance against Alabama might be holding them to 28, depending on how all this plays out, which means Georgia needs more than that to win the game. So if I want to see a Georgia win, I think you need 31-28, certainly at least 29-28 if you want to be able to get that done. I don't see Bama scoring fewer points than that on Saturday. So with all that in mind, That's reason for me to take the to take the over here. I'll be the lone wolf on that side. The flow is heavily on the side of the under. You want to go with the flow and take the under.
No, I'm gonna join the wolf pack.
There you go.
Okay, I'm coming in with you. In this game, points will be scored. Okay, on both sides of the ball. Bama's averaging 51 points per game. Georgia's defense is good. They're the best in the nation. They're going to slow them down a tad. Like you said, I think that's around, you said 28. I'm thinking it's like low 30s, somewhere around there. However, you know, Pickens had an issue last year at the Georgia Tech game. You know, his immaturity showed. He came back and bounced back in the bowl game. You know, when he had some time off there. I think with this, he got a little again. The immaturity kind of showed. I think Pickens is going to have a Sugar Bowl-like performance against Bama. I think he's going to rise to this occasion. I think the talent's going to show. He's from that state. A lot of points are going to be scored here. I think both teams are going to be in the 30s. I love the over.
I think that's great analysis for what should be a very fun game coming up this weekend. And just like always, we appreciate you being a part of Go With The Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews this week. Don't forget to check out our friends at R.S. Andrews. We're heading towards the time of the year where either you've already turned on your furnace some at night, or you know that's about to start happening. Those cooler evenings on the way can only be a precursor to the winter that's also yet to come. And if you're concerned that your heating system might not be ready to go for the winter that's about to be, well, get some peace of mind by getting your system tuned back up to factory fresh specs. Find our friends online at R.S. Andrews. They'll take good care of you and all that, give you that peace of mind that you need to know that you'll stay warm and toasty all winter long. And hopefully your picks will keep you feeling warm and toasty here this weekend as well. Dari, best of luck to you and all of that. And we'll look forward to speaking to you again next week.
Go Dogs.
Love to hear that. And of course, to all of you, thanks for tuning in for Go With The Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews. Enjoy the weekend, and we'll talk to you again very soon.